Here we go. Today's lunch and learn. It's about a three-legged stool. And where does the three-legged stool come from? I'll get into that in a few minutes here as I talk about the things that I've learned over the years with regards to this theory that I have. It's kind of the philosophy behind York Safety Solutions. And who is York Safety Solutions? Folks, we're basically passionate safety professionals who come from the skilled trades. We've not arrived. We haven't been there, done that with everything. But we are iron workers, welders, plumbers, electricians, fabricators. We've worked in all different types of trades, carpenters. And I like that because we have experienced the frustrations of trying to accomplish the objectives in the field with scheduling, manpower, weather, the client, the safety guy, and then yet make the company money. And so we understand that, and that certainly makes it a little bit easier. We understand the real challenges to job site safety. And so the guys that work for us, that's kind of who we are. Who am I? Well, I started off years ago truck driving for a construction industry when I got out of the Marine Corps. I worked in the field as a laborer. Most of my time in the field and in the shops was fabricating and welding. And that's what I did mostly on the job sites. Eventually started running work. I soon became a foreman, project manager. Ultimately, after 25 years, became the owner, vice president of a company, and had some serious accidents and injuries. And throughout the process of that, both active duty and reserves, I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps. And so during that time, I learned a lot about leadership that I could see on the battlefield and I can see in my unit, but it was difficult to establish some of these things when I was working in construction. So I decided to try to see if I could bring it all together. And just about everything I've learned, folks, has been learned the hard way. And there is a better way. You don't have to learn the way that I did. And I tell that to people all the time. Don't learn the way that I did. And so what that mean? That means as a foreman, as a project manager, as an owner, I had to deal with these guys. And I don't know if everybody's on video or if you've called in, maybe you can't see the slide, but it's just OSHA standing on the job site. And when OSHA showed up on the job site, I had to deal with them. And because I didn't deal with them properly, it cost the company serious penalties. I was a kind of a fake it till you make it guy in the field. And I tried to tell people what I thought was the truth, and it wasn't really the truth because I wasn't trained. I didn't have anybody holding me accountable. And it was, and nobody was coming out to look at, to make sure I was doing it right. And so then these guys show up, and it still happens today with a lot of our clients. More importantly, myself, my crew, and my employees, instead of just worrying about OSHA, more importantly, we were all exposed to injuries that could impact them for the rest of their lives. And not only did it happen to me, but it happened to guys on my crew, and eventually it happened to my employees as I started to run a company. And so that's the message I'm trying to get out to folks. Sadly, at that time, I was more focused on success and making money. It really wasn't about people. It wasn't about safety. It wasn't about anything. It was about getting up that ladder, growing that company, getting as bigger, better, as faster as I possibly could for completely selfish reasons. And ultimately, as a foreman and a project manager and owner, then you have emergency responders showing up on your job site, not just OSHA, but then something else happens. And now it's emergency responders coming to a site, coming to your job to see what's going on and what happened and how did it happen. And I had to deal with that more than once as a foreman, project manager, and even an owner. And ultimately, what happens now, at that point, these really put my crew and my job and my project and my reputation on the line. And I was more worried about that. And I'm not proud to say that. For those of you who know me, I'm just very, very truthful and candid about where I failed miserably, not only on the construction site in my business, but other areas of my life. And so I had to deal with this more than once. And I was just worried about, man, what about my reputation? What about, today everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's taking pictures. Things are posted on social media. This type of photo here could be your company's logo on the back of that piece of equipment. Or you could have prevented this accident or injury, or your employer even. And are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And now as a safety consultant, I continue to deal with these. We've had fatalities right here in town not too long ago, just outside of town. And there's a lot of people that get injured and they get seriously hurt, and we never hear about it for whatever reason. And sometimes it's happening within the doors of our own company. And so I'm trying to help change that, as are other safety professionals in Chattanooga. And so that's why we wanted to have this discussion. But more importantly than the emergency responders showing up, they were seriously injured because of my poor leadership, because I was all about just trying to get it done. And I got to live with that today. And you may have to live with that today. And I don't know who's on this call or who's dialed in here today, but maybe you're living with it today. And we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to tell somebody that we failed, that our leadership was poor, that somebody got hurt, something bad happened on a job site because we didn't do our job. But in many cases, I find that's to be the truth. That was the truth. And that was the case with me. It's not always our fault. It could be somebody else's. But did we do what we were supposed to do? And I often tell folks, you don't have to learn that. You don't have to live with this. There's a better way. And if we're so focused on your contract and landing and making money and building our resume, you will be humbled as I was. And then in my time in the military, I've had to deal with this too. And this too was also my poor leadership, due to my calloused attitude towards those that needed better leadership than I provided them. And so anybody who ever does this, if you know that you could have prevented an accident, an injury, a fatality, something tragic on a job site, you saw it, you knew it was going on, you tried to convince yourself that it wasn't your responsibility and it's really not your job, but you truly know down in your heart of hearts that you were responsible, you'll never forget it. It'll haunt you forever. What happened to me here happened over 30 years ago, and it still bothers me today. And similar on the construction site. And there's a lot of people that struggle with it, but nobody wants to talk about it. So other things, what else as an owner? Okay, so we talked about OSHA, we talked about accidents and injuries, and then there's insurance increases. I remember our EMR was 1.21. For those who don't know what that means, experience modification rate. Talk to your boss. Maybe you're a safety professional on here. I'm not sure you know what that means. That means anything above 1, your company is paying an elevated insurance premiums. Like in this case, 21% more than your competition. So your accidents, your injuries, right, affect the profitability of the job. Nobody thinks about that. Let me change that. A lot of people don't think about that. I didn't think about that until I became an owner. And then all of a sudden, my bids were declined. Charlie, your insurance rate's too high. You're too many accidents, too many injuries. So guess what? Your bid goes in a no-go pile. People don't think about that on a day-to-day basis. What about getting the job done? Let your foreman know. Let your crew know. Everything they do, every decision they make can have a catastrophic impact on the company. And quite honestly, for me, it was embarrassing. I was a good iron worker. I was a good fabricator. I was a leader. So I thought. And then ultimately, my company that did a lot of business with one of our clients, several of them, no longer, they wouldn't accept our bids anymore. And I see my competition rolling their vehicles in on a job site that I would have had, or a client that I've done a lot of business with. So that can happen to you as well. So maybe you've experienced that. But more importantly than my EMR, my insurance was increased because my employees were exposed to hazards or even injured because of my get it done safety culture. When I was in the field, there was a guy by the name of Paul. I worked for him for years, and he'd call me Red Line Charlie. Charlie, you just go 100 miles an hour, man. You just get it done. You got to slow down. You got to slow down. In some cases, they wanted me to slow down because they didn't want to speed it up. In other cases, I liked the fact that I was known as Red Line Charlie. I'm going to get it done. And I did. And I got hurt. And other people got hurt. And I get on a job site as an owner and talk to my crew about products, schedules, materials, manpower, the client. I get in my truck after an hour. We go over the drawings, drive away. Never once said anything to my foreman about safety. And then somebody fell. and broke their back and was taken off in a helicopter. Well, that's another story for another day. I didn't want it to see it that I didn't want to see it that way. I didn't see it as I had to get it done attitude. I figured, hey, you got hurt, you did something silly. No, I created a culture that did not foster safety as a priority, and I was humbled because of it. And there's people today that ain't the same because of it. And I have to live with that. Continues to go on in our industry. I continue to drive through the streets of, Georgia, Cleveland, Chattanooga, doesn't matter. And I see people that are get it done. And when I try to talk to them about safety, it happened just yesterday. I won't get into that now. But I should have seen that it was me that was creating that culture. It was me that was creating that. And I needed to change that, and I didn't. And then ultimately, as an owner, dealing with lawsuits, being accused of being pulled on the carpet for not having the things that I'm supposed to have by the federal regulations that I didn't even know, because I was just a guy just trying to get out there and make money and be successful. And when you have to start answering questions in front of attorneys and you get subpoenaed, and you have to sit down at a coffee shop and talk to an attorney about what happened on the job site. Were you there? And did you see it? Could you have done anything about it? Does your employer talk to you about safety? You're going to find out that you're going to tell the truth. You're not going to try to protect anybody. Some of my employees worked for me for 10, 15, 17 years, actually, one of them. And ultimately had no problem telling the judge that safety is not a priority here. They never talk about safety. Broke my heart to hear that, but it was the truth. Is that going on inside of your company? Is it going on our job sites? And I can tell you the answer is yes. I know it is, because I'm there and I see it. And so nobody thinks that this is going to happen. Again, more importantly, I was in court because of my poor leadership. Okay? I was responsible. Nobody else. I could blame it on whoever I want to, right? And so it takes leadership, good leadership. And so my challenge for everyone that's dialed in here, would you consider yourself a good leader? Are you a good leader? And I learned this years ago from a guy by the name of Gunnery Sergeant Johnson when I was a young Marine, and I wanted to be a leader. You see, leadership's not a title or a position. This is what he used to say. If you think you're a leader, York, look behind you. If no one's eager to follow you, you're not a leader. Just because you're a corporal, or just because you're a sergeant or a foreman or a project manager or a president or an owner or a principal in the company, if you don't have people that are eager to follow you, you're not a leader. And they're going to do whatever you say or whatever you do, or some people may not stick around and they'll go elsewhere. So I had to look behind me and see who's following me. And today I'm trying to be a better leader, and I still have work to do. I think we all do. And so ask yourself, are you a good leader? Are you working for a company that the individual that's leading the company is a good leader? And if he's not, or they're not, or she's not, then what are you doing about it? Are you on a job site talking about it to other people? Or are you asking the owner, or is somebody coming to you? Have you fostered an environment where they can come to you and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something? Because you won't be a championship team if you don't have good leadership inside of a company. And so what does that mean? Well, there are many in our industries that don't think about OSHA. They don't think that the accident's going to show up. They may not think about insurance costs, and they might not think they can show up in a courtroom. But there are some good-willed people who do. There are people who want to prevent all these things from happening to them, not because of reputation or because of money, but because it's the right thing to do. And some good-willed people, they want to do it. They like me, they don't know what to do. They don't know what they're supposed to do to make this happen. And so I learned the hard way. And I'm trying to tell folks, you don't have to learn the way that I learned, right? I learned I needed to build a strong three-legged stool. I learned I needed to do something that was undeniable, successful, and it works. And this theory of a three-legged stool, this didn't come from anything except me laying in bed one night when one of our clients, it was an iron worker, and he said, Charlie, you're never going to change these guys. They've been doing it this way for years. They're never going to change. And I thought about that. and this three-legged stool came to my mind. And the reason it came to my mind is I found myself reflecting back on my training long before I became a foreman, project manager, general manager, and owner. Long before then, when I had the most impact on the lives of others. See, sometimes in construction, I wasn't having the traction. I wasn't having the impact on people's lives. I kept seeing the same things over and over again. People weren't impacted by my leadership. And there was a reason, because I wasn't leading very well. I didn't think they understood leadership. So I just did what construction people do. And then ultimately, I reflected back at a time when I was surrounded by men with great courage and great character. So when was that? It was when I was in the Marine Corps. When I was in the Marine Corps doesn't teach this three-legged stool model. They don't teach it. This does not come from the Marine Corps. This came from me laying in the rack one night thinking about what am I going to do. I went from an iron worker, a construction guy, and I knew I wanted to do something about safety. I knew I didn't want people to experience what I experienced. Good, successful, reputable companies going out of business. I didn't tell you the whole history, but several companies. One of them was in business for 118 years, and they're out of business today. And so are most of our competition that worked in that area. And so ultimately, I reflected back on what did we do in the Marine Corps? How did we become champions in the Marine Corps? How did we fight in combat? How did we do things with success so that men became men? And you can tell the mettle of a man by what happens when adversity comes. Is he going to cower? Is he going to tell the boss what he wants to hear? Is the boss going to tell the foreman what he wants to hear? The client what he wants to hear? So how does this happen? So I use this as a model. The Marine Corps does a phenomenal job, as do other branches of service, training the warriors that fight for our country. They train them to exhaustion. How well do you train, or how well have you been trained to do your job wherever you are? I don't care whether you're an estimator, project manager, marketing person, or a safety guy. How well are you trained? How thorough is the training? Who did the training? Were they qualified? Were they passionate? Were they knowledgeable? The next thing after someone's trained, they need to be audited or inspected or observed, however you want to put it in there. In other words, after we do these things, we go out and somebody's watching us, the gunnery sergeant, the platoon sergeant, the company commander, the executive officer of the company. We're being watched. And if you don't do what you are trained to do, there's accountability. There's consequences for acts of disobedience. And that you build all three of those. You build a strong training program, you go out and watch your folks, you hold them accountable, and you'll have a strong three-legged stool. You can buy all the PPE you want. You can write all the safety programs till you're blue in your face. You can issue all the PPE you want. If the people aren't using it when you go out and see them, and you're not holding them accountable, you might as well throw that safety manual away, throw the PPE in a dumpster, because you don't have a strong safety program. And that was me. And it's a lot of what I see in our industry. So what happens if you remove one leg of this stool in our military? What happens in our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, all right, our branches of service? What happens? They become combat ineffective. In other words, they will be useless in battle because nobody trained them well, nobody watched them, and nobody held them accountable. They'll have serious injuries, okay? They will have a poor reputation. That unit may never go to war because what the military calls non-deployable. You failed your training test, you failed the inspection, and you're not holding your people accountable. You ain't going to battle. It's embarrassing. When you go to battle and you don't have a strong three-legged stool, you have no peace of mind. You don't know whether or not you can win the battle. You don't know whether you can treat people's lives on the battlefield. You don't have a peace of mind. You're paralyzed by fear. And then sadly enough, people die on the battlefield. They die on the battlefield because the training was weak. Nobody was out there watching them. The platoon commander and platoon sergeant sat in his office, where it's nice and air conditioned, never went out to the field. We don't go out to our job sites sometimes. Project managers never leave their office at times. And the superintendent's out there trying to fight that battle all by himself. And nobody's holding that project manager or even the owner or maybe even the superintendent or the foreman accountable. And so you'll have deaths on your job sites too. Here's the example. When we train in the military, this is called grass week. Grass week is a week of sitting in the grass. Now they put their helmets and their flak jackets on and they point their weapon at that little 55-gallon drum with these little different targets on it. And you're learning all the basic fundamentals of marksmanship. Cheek weld, sight alignment, sight picture, natural point of aim, breathing, trigger squeeze, all this stuff so that you can hit a target a long ways away. You do that for a week. There's no bullets. There's nothing going bang. You sit in a big circle for a week in the grass, aiming at a stupid plastic target. It's ridiculous, and we hate it. And troops are still doing it today. Thank God. When you're done with that, and you've mastered all those positions, sitting, prone, kneeling, offhand, and you go to the range, and you try to hit that target way down range, and you're trying to become an expert, and you have a man sitting next to you with binoculars and a clipboard, and he's marking every little shot that you hit. He's inspecting you to make sure that you did what you were trained. It works well if you applied your training. But there is no shortcuts here. That goes on for a week in the baking sun without complaining. You can't say, hey, I don't want to wear my safety glasses. It's too hot. I don't want to wear long sleeves. It's too hot. It doesn't happen. And then ultimately, you do what you're trained. Accountability is a good thing. You become on the Marine Corps sniper team. You go to Quantico, Virginia, or whatever thing. But the accountability is a good thing. You get rewarded because you're doing a good job. You're on this conference call and you're doing a good job and your boss is not rewarding you and telling you you're doing a good job, then he doesn't have a three-legged stool. Accountability isn't always bad. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have people on your team, in the field, in your office, that aren't hitting the mark. They're not even applying nothing. They can't hit nothing. And so guess what? When that happens in our military, it should happen on our job sites. Everybody's held accountable. Everybody pays the price for the one individual that didn't do his job, that doesn't care, that has a complacent attitude. Everybody pays the price. You see, in construction, if somebody doesn't wear his fall protection, somebody climbs down in the ditch like they were about to yesterday before I showed up. There was an owner of an excavating company, his equipment operator, the contractor that was going down to pressure test the line, in an 8-foot deep ditch with almost vertical walls, and a superintendent, junior superintendent watching. And guess what? Nobody was going to stop him. And I showed up at the right time. Sadly, anyway, I won't go on that. Accountability. Accountability is important. And so if somebody went in that ditch and somebody was to die, you could have the general contractor, the site contractor, and the plumbing contractor could all go out of business because of the poor decision-making of one or two individuals. The whole company could be gone. That's what happened to me. It happened to me before I started my own company. So that's the accountability. What does this have to do with us? It's just got to do with us. In construction, build a three-legged stool. Build a strong one. Get your folks trained. Don't look at the resume. A guy walks in your door and has this resume, says he can slice, dice, chop, and mince. Maybe you did it. I did it. I faked it till you made it. I told people I could do things I couldn't do. Don't look at the resume. Get them out there on a piece of equipment. See if they know how to run it. See if they know how to weld. See if they know how to rig. Ask some basic questions. Get your safety guy involved. Get us involved. Get another safety professional involved. And do some screening on your people. And then do some training, some new hire orientation. Don't just send them out on the job site. Then you have to watch and audit them. That better be documented. The training better be documented. The audit needs to be documented. And who's doing the auditing? I used to leave it up to my foreman. Hey, it's your job to keep an eye on this job, make sure it stays safe. My foreman wasn't doing that. He wasn't doing it any more than I was doing it. Now, I'm not saying foreman won't do it. What I'm saying, what I see, foreman, superintendents sometimes, PMs, they're not doing it. If a PM visits a job 3 or 4 times a week and then I show up there on a given day and I see all kinds of safety violations. I know the PM's not doing his job. His crew there's no accountability. And that's the next one. That's why the job site looks the way it is. Sadly, I have to tell a lot of our clients, well, I was only there for 1 hour. This job's been going on for 6 months. I'm there frequently. Once in a while I show up, it's a mess. Do you really think I just happen to show up at the right time? And, I need to be truthful to those who I work for, and I will. I'll treat them with respect. Because of what I've been through, I'm very passionate about this. So what happens if you remove any leg of this stool from a construction standpoint? Injuries, citations, a bad reputation in town, no peace of mind, insurance continues to go up, and lawsuits. And you might be sitting here going, well, none of that happens to me. I mean, then you're fortunate. But are you safe? Are you lucky? Or are you safe? And if you're safe, keep up the good work. I can't commend you and praise you enough. And if that's the case, maybe that's why you're here, because you're just trying to keep that charge going. And some of you might be sitting there going, man, we don't have any of this in place. Well, there's folks that can help you get these things in place. So do I just make this stuff up? No, this is what OSHA says. It says the employer shall instruct, which means train, each employee how to recognize and avoid hazards in the workplace and to control those hazards or other exposures to illness and injuries. It's the OSHA regs, federal regulation. Okay. People say, well, I've been in this industry for 20 years, Charlie. I've never seen OSHA on the job site. Here's the bottom line, regardless of whether you see OSHA or not. Training your people so they go home to their families at the end of the day is the right thing to do. And so many aren't doing anything. I know for a fact the training that we do here in town, that we offer, the AGC offers, other safety professionals offer, is just not attended the way it should be. And then you go out in the field the next day and you see what we're talking about. Because the employer doesn't want to pay for the training. You don't want to go to the training. Your employees don't want to go to the training or whatever. Just so you know, it's not an option. It's the right thing to do morally, regardless if you've never seen OSHA. So we try to make the training impactful, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's on a job site, whether we're hanging from the structural steel on a construction job to show these guys what happens when you fall from a harness. That's me hanging from a harness there, explaining to these guys, how do you think you're going to get down? What's your rescue plan? And you'll see a bunch of blank faces. You can't hang in that harness too long before something really serious could happen to you, even life-threatening. So the training has to be good. And you got to document it. Okay, what about the second leg of the stool? It talks about audits and inspection. There's your federal regulation. Shall provide frequent and regular inspections on the job sites. Materials and equipment by a competent person. You're going to leave it up to your foreman or your project manager, or they're leaving it up to you, gentlemen, ladies, make sure you do your job. If you say, I don't know what to inspect, I don't even know what I'm doing out here, you're not alone. That's what safety professionals help you with. And there's folks in town that'll help you do that. By a competent person. He's able to recognize and predict hazards. And he has the ability, or she has the ability, to take corrective actions. I walk on a job, I see a ditch being dug, I see a guy working up on a roof, and I go, okay, guys, which one of you is the competent person? Sometimes they're there, and sometimes they're not. But your frequent and regular inspections, they need to be documented. It's required by law. And most importantly, the heck with the law, it's the right thing to do. If you're not out there watching your folks, if you're not out there inspecting them, if you're not out there taking pictures, if you're not holding them accountable, which is the next leg of the stool, you really don't have a safety program. I was talking to a safety professional the other day. I had lunch with him, right? He said, well, I'm doing all this stuff online and online and online. And I got this compliance program, and there's nothing wrong with that stuff. He doesn't want to bring his people in the classroom. He doesn't want to go out and do it. He's doing everything online and online and online. And ultimately, from my experience, if human beings ain't talking to human beings in front of human beings where we can ask questions, challenge each other, look at their body language to see if they're doing the right thing, then your training program is probably not what it should be. And the same with audits. Make sure your competent person's out there doing audits. So our audits are basically 2 or 3 page documents, very detailed, and the guy who signs my check for your company finds out exactly what's going on the job site, and that makes people mad. And I can't help that. If you don't want a bad report, then tighten up your job. And then the last leg of the stool is accountability for us. These are the questions that are often asked. Just happened to me recently with a client with OSHA. Do you have a written disciplinary program? Yes. Can you show me records where you've written up people who have violated? Have you enforced it? It's one thing to have it written. Are you doing anything about it? I didn't. Is your company doing anything about it? You know, people that want to write people up because they think, well, that's just going to make them mad, or he's going to quit. And I'm telling you what, there's an expression out there: the pen is mightier than the sword. And you got to take a grown man my age, half my age, older than me, and bring him in the office and have him sign a piece of paper. You could save his life. All it is a little bit of ink on a piece of paper. And these guys will kick and scream and fight, and some. And others who are mature, who are good leaders, who knew they weren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, will humbly come into the office or on the job site, and they'll sign a disciplinary program sheet. You document it. And now you're starting to build a strong three-legged stool. You've got the training, the audits, and you're holding them accountable. It's a very critical part of your safety program. You can train them till you're blue in the face. You can go out and watch what they're doing. You don't execute with accountability, you got a two-legged stool. Falls right over. Falls right over in the courtroom. Falls over in front of OSHA. It'll fall over when you try to argue with your insurance company. And it'll fall over when you're sitting next to somebody's children or their wife or their husband in a hospital room when they're asking you, how did this happen? And you know that you were just trying to be a nice guy. You can still be a nice guy. People say, well, Charlie, we really like our guys. We're like a family. We don't want to do this. Well, if you truly cared about them, let's be honest, you'd do the right thing so that the guy can retire when it's time and spend time with his family. And so sometimes the reason we don't hold people accountable, I know it seems like a pretty brass word, but because there's cowards in our industry. The cowards are those who will not do this. And I know that's offensive, but it's true. And so if you don't hold your children, if you don't train your kids on what you expect with them, if you don't watch your children and you don't hold them accountable, those children are the ones that are showing up on our job sites that cannot take after them, can't take care of themselves. They show up late. They don't know what to do. They have no initiative. They have no leadership. And that's what you're putting out into the workforce. You do it with your children, I hope. You have to do it with grown men and women. We're natural, we're human beings. If you don't train me, you don't watch me, and you don't hold me accountable, Charlie York is going to get sloppy. If somebody doesn't say to me, Charlie, you show me in the OSHA regulation where it says I got to do that. And the people that do that, I love it when they do it. Anybody's on this conference call, you challenge me after this lunch and learn, I welcome it because it makes me better at what I do. Don't bow up on people who challenge you, or don't deal with somebody who bows up on you because you're challenging him when he's putting somebody's life or his own in jeopardy. I will tell you this, if there is no accountability, there's no culture change. Well, Charlie, that's what I heard back in day one. Remember when I started this safety company? Charlie, you're never going to change him. You're never going to change him. Well, guess what? That company's been with us since 2008 right now. They have a strong safety culture. They're not perfect. The people were getting written up. And there's a great story that I'm going to finish up with here in just a few minutes so I can get you guys back to work. And just know that accountability can be positive. You walk on a job site, you shake a man or a woman's hand, you give them a pat on the back and tell them they're doing a good job. It will motivate them to continue to do it. And again, most importantly, it's the right thing to do. You will sleep much better at night. So how do we build this three-legged stool? The same way we do everything else we should do. You guys that are plumbers, pipe fitters, electricians, construction guys, general contractors, site contractors, I hope you do what you do, and I hope you do it with passion. If you've got a safety guy, or if you are a safety guy, and you're not passionate about what you're doing, and it's just a gig for you, you shouldn't be a safety guy. If you're not passionate about being a doctor, tell your kids, don't go to school to be a doctor. If they're not passionate about being a plumber, pipe fitter, then don't be one, or anything else. And so when it comes to this, your training program, your inspections, and your accountability has to be done with passion, and it can't be passive. It's got to be something that is ingrained into you and those who you influence, so that you can make a difference in the lives of others. And it'll make you feel great. So recently, we had a fall, 40-foot fall. This is not passion. Nobody wanted to say nothing to this guy. Nobody did anything. And he fell and he hit the concrete. He's 50 years old and he's got a wife and children. There's no fall protection. Nobody said anything. They had no three-legged stool. And then there's other companies that are driving around. They're going through this Tennessee drug-free workplace. They're getting 5% off their workers' compensation. They're checking the boxes. They've got people taking drugs. There's people sitting in the front seat of crew trucks together. There's marijuana being smoked. There's drinking. There's guys taking prescription drugs. You sit next to a guy in the front of a pickup truck. He opens up his lunch pail and he puts some pills in his mouth. And nobody wants to ask the question, well, what did you just take? And then there's accidents. And then drug tests are done. But you know what? They got a Tennessee drug-free workplace. It's pitiful. I've seen it. I've watched it. I've heard about it. Our Tennessee drug-free workplace program training that we do is unlike no other, in my opinion. It's about getting real and getting candid and very transparent. And make sure you're not just checking the box. Is it even being followed? Many are, and I commend them for doing it. Many are not. And then you talk to people that are hauling equipment up and down the road, just throwing straps over the top of equipment. Straps aren't rated for the equipment. Straps are damaged. Don't even know how to use a ratchet strap. And when you talk to them, they say, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. Doesn't make any difference what it is. Excavation, fall protection, framing, electrical. I hear that all the time. So do other safety professionals. You may have heard it as well. Guess what? He's never had any training. Then I have to show him what the regulations say about securing loads on trailers. He's never been trained. It's not his fault. And things like this happen. People die. And then they go back and they want to see your training records, your inspections, your accountability. Then there's iron workers. There's riggers that drop loads from the sky. It just falls and hits down below. Experienced crane operators, experienced iron workers. These guys all know better, right? But because maybe they were trained, but nobody's out there inspecting them. And so they tell me, well, Charlie, the joist just hit the ground. The load just hit the ground. Loads just don't hit the ground. And after a little investigation, we find out that they hitched it wrong. They didn't use the right hitch for the load. That's why the crane operator picked it. He knew better. The foreman knew better. But we got to get this iron set so we can get this crane off the job site. Well, the first investigation, X-investigation, was bogus and it was falsified. The second one was legit. I had two grown men my age look me in the face and flat out lied to me until I kept asking them questions and they finally confessed. Why is it our industry has grown men and women that continue to cover their tracks and lie and cheat and steal and do whatever they got to do? It's because training, inspections, and accountability isn't in place. They have a poor safety culture. They don't think there's any consequence. Well, there was there. We got guys setting trusses. They don't even want to finish putting all over the drawings. It says it must ensure that adequate temporary bracing's in place. Well, we only got this crane for a couple of days, so let's just do a few braces and keep going. And then 3 or 4 people go to the hospital. The drawings are peppered with red font about temporary bracing. They don't have no training, no inspections, and no accountability. They're just trying to get it done. A couple more and then I'll be done. This guy, 56 years old. His name is Pete. I trained him in confined space, an exhaustive confined space. After all of his training, he's a supervisor. He went down into a space at 56 years old, was exposed to H2S gas. and he died because he just disregarded all of his training. All that document's being requested right now. So let's wrap up with this. So this is one of our good clients. Yes, they're iron workers. Yes, OSHA's taking these pictures. They're up on the steel. They're up on the wall. They're above 15 feet. They're setting deck. They never knew OSHA took these pictures. They told their foreman they were tied off. He was at a meeting, and the general contractors. They're walking the wall here. They walked this whole wall over here. Nobody knew OSHA was taking these photos. We went to the OSHA hearing, and they finally busted these folders out, and it humbled us because I was told by the crew and the foreman, Charlie, they were tied off the whole time. I said, well, let's go fight it. They were up to 26 feet with no fall protection, no tied off. Didn't have the ability to tie off, they said. OSHA said. They got a serious violation. It was $6,500. You can see the name of the company. It's Raymar Steel Company. Why would I tell you their name? Because the owner said, Charlie, you tell everybody in the world about this story. So they got cited for fall protection, $6,500. There's all kinds of different violations out there. But as an iron worker getting exposed to a fall protection hazard, trying to keep your nose clean for 5 years, it's pretty unlikely. So they would get whacked again. We went and we fought it. This is the informal settlement agreement. Notice the fine is now zero. How does it go from $6,400 to zero? I'll tell you how it goes there, because they got a strong three-legged stool. It's proof that it works. So in other words, your insurance, you go in your arm wrestle insurance guy, say, hey, insurance guy, guess what? We're doing the right thing. The OSHA's, lawsuits, all this stuff. If you don't have a strong three-legged stool like these folks didn't, right? Each one of these accidents ended in a fatality, a serious injury, a lawsuit, an OSHA penalty, increased insurance, lifelong regret. One or more of those, because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And that's what we're out trying to tell people to do. Do your job. Do what you're supposed to do so that you can be a professional plumber, pipe fitter, general contractor, whatever it happens to be. And so ultimately, if we build a strong three-legged stool, you got reduced injuries, citations get reduced, I'm sure. Your reputation is strong. There's strong people in Chattanooga and AGC members that have a great reputation. They have peace of mind. They have reduced insurance, and they've never been sued because they have it, and they're doing it. We've proven that it works. So my question as I end up here, we're out of time. It is 11:31. I want to be respectful to y'all's time. Here's my question to you to take to your management, or if you're in management, you. How strong is your company's three-legged stool? What does it look like? If you don't have a good answer, then give us a call or call somebody else in town, because they'll take care of you. Meanwhile, everybody, stay safe. Thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it. If there's anything that York Safety Solutions can do to help you, we would be more than happy to. And then I appreciate you. Thank you.